something that is, in my mind, very applicable to all of us and very applicable to our everyday life. So I'm trying to bring the ethereal concepts more into reality. So today we're going to talk about controlling your thoughts. And I want to keep it as interactive and as practical as possible. So if you have questions, feel free to ask all of them. So we all have, at some points in our life, if not continuously, experienced something that is similar to our thoughts being outside of our control. In other words, they work spontaneously, right? It's almost like we have a complete separation from our thoughts, and it gets to a point where we are more controlled by our thoughts than we are able to control our thoughts. As you know, I'm not a big fan of statistical studies that are done there because I think they're full of flaws. But I'll tell you that I try to figure out, well, how many thoughts do I have in a day? And without having a counter, it's very hard. So I went to my inner sanctum sanctorum, which is called the internet, and found out that on average, human beings have about 70,000 thoughts. 70,000 thoughts. I had no idea how far off or how accurate that is, but that is to say, quite a number of thoughts, more than 5 a day. So if we have that much thoughts, then what does that mean for our life? What does that mean for our existence? And what does that mean for the time that we think we are living? Yes? So people in the West says that there's only 24 hours a day, and it is not how long you have, but it is how you're using that time. And my theory is that if we could control our thoughts, it may still be 24 hours a day by clock time, but for us, it would be like having 58 hours a day, right? So today I'm going to try to explain how you can perhaps control your thoughts, and as a result, you can improve your productivity in a more meaningful way. And I don't mean productivity as in like produce more thoughts, productivity, but to actually do something meaningfully so that you feel satisfaction inside. Okay, so why do we have so many thoughts? Most of the time, yoga will say that most of the time we have so many thoughts because we cannot immerse ourselves into the one thought or the one activity surrounding that thought. And most of the time, the reason this happens is because what we are doing as a result of our thoughts, or what we are doing during the period of time when random thoughts are generated, seemingly random thoughts are generated, is because we do not find the right level of difficulty, the right level of challenge in what we are doing. So how this goes is, if you are doing something that is very easy for you, you have plenty of cognitive ability to distribute that into something else. And because in order to do something, you have to pay a little bit of attention, that attention does not exist in the remainder of what is going on in your head. As a result, random thoughts are produced. The counterpart of that is also true. If you have undertaken something that is very challenging for you, in other words, it has just passed the limit of your capability to handle, you will also produce a lot of thoughts. Okay? I don't want to get into whether those are negative thoughts or positive thoughts because it doesn't really matter. First, control your thoughts, and then we can get into whether they are working for you or against you. In fact, I'll argue that if you have control over your thoughts, there is no such thing as negative thoughts. Because why would you controllingly, in a controlled fashion, produce something that does not serve you well? Okay? So why do we produce thoughts? Because most of the time, the activities that we engage ourselves in, whether it is a result of our thoughts or it is the activity that produces those thoughts, is because of two categories. Either they are too simple for us, and as a result, it does not absorb us entirely, or they are too challenging for us, as a result of which we fill the gap, our inabilities, with certain thoughts. Make sense? Okay. So what are we going to do about it? Well, the The simpler way to say it is find the right level of challenge in everything that you do. No matter what you do, find the right level of challenge. The moment you find that something is becoming simpler for you, you have to change it. And that requires consciousness. And consciousness requires cognitive attention. And just by virtue of having that cognition, you are already controlling your thoughts. Does that make sense? Okay. So, if you look at your life, I suggest that you spend a little bit of time going forward when you're doing something to bring a little bit more awareness as to whether it is too easy or too difficult for you. What do you do if it is too easy? What you do is you try to make it more challenging. And I promise you that if you were to exercise your creativity and your intellect, which you all have inherently within you, you can make anything a little bit more challenging. For example, let's say that you do not like vacuuming your room. Okay? And so what do? You pick up your vacuum and you figure out what's the least amount of strokes you can make to clean up an area. And that will become challenging. And then you keep account of it. So you're absorbing all of your mind to figure out how many exact, precise steps I took in order to be the most effective today in order to vacuum your room. In other words, you're making a task that is even simple that you're required to do more challenging. Most of the time we ignore the power and the ability and the importance of food and eating. And because it is something that we have been doing since the dawn of our existence, we feel like it is the time to do other things when we are eating. So we watch TV, we read a book, we chat with people watch, we walk while we are eating, heck, we even drive while we are eating. Okay? So what do? What you do is you make the work of eating, the job of eating, more challenging for you. How can you do that? You can absorb, you can try to sense all the flavors, all the textures, all the essences of food from every bite that you take. Right? You already know from my previous lectures that in order to absorb your mind, there are three senses that you need to control. One is the sense of sight, the next one is the sense of hearing, and the third one is the sense of touch. Now you can tell me that, well, this is ridiculous, Raj, because eating is all about taste, and you're not saying that that is a thing that we need to control. We don't need to control it because we already have very well developed sense of taste. So even if you are driving and you bite into something so salty, you will automatically register that it is salty, or sour, or spicy, or what have you. So you don't need to spend a lot of cognitive ability in order to understand that texture. So if you're eating, try to absorb your sense of sight, your sense of touch, as well as your sense of hearing. How? You figure that out. For you, it will be a little bit different than for him, But that's how you absorb. Even simple things can be made very, very profound so that it traps your attention. Make sense? Okay. Challenging. So do you have any questions about how to make simple things more challenging? These are just simple examples, but you can tell that anything that you do can become that much more
You're challenging yourself and focusing.
Yes. Or you can make it more challenging. So if you are a good runner and you run 20 miles a day and you have to run 5 miles, it's very easy for you. I encourage you to be aware of every single step and where you are stepping. And remember the color of every single building in a sequence. It will automatically become challenging, right? So you find the right level of challenge so that your mind does not have room to wander around. Okay, and I'll tell you why in a second. If something is very challenging for you, if something is just about the boundary, the threshold of what you are not comfortable, but beyond just being comfortable, then what do? You have to figure out how to break down that work into a level that is just below, pushing you over the top. Yeah? So, I do not have a good example, but let's say that you were challenged by building a house in one day. So what? You don't build a house in one day. You break it up into bits and pieces and figure out how you're going to build. Let's say that you're designing a website and it is overwhelming for you because there are so many different components that you need to juggle in between. So you break it up into smaller pieces. Not so small that it is familiar and easy for you, because then you will lose focus and it will never get done. You have to keep it at such a level so that it just pushes your boundary. If you think that you can put together, you can edit 5 different images, go for 6. If you can do 6 comfortably, go for 7, etc., etc. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Then the other thing that happens that makes our thoughts uncontrolling is this notion that when you're working on something, your mind constantly tells you that you have something else that you need to work on. In fact, you have 15 other things that you need to focus on at the same time. So you're doing this, but you're thinking about when you're going to get to it. It is really, really counterproductive, because the more you think about the other, the slower this task becomes, and so the farther away that task goes from you. Yeah, we all experience this. Okay.